Hello, today's Bible study comes from the book of Acts, chapter 19, verses 32 through 41, and reads as follows. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Most of the people did not even know why they were there. The Jews in the crowd pushed Alexander to the front, and they shouted instructions to him. He motioned for silence in order to make a defense before the people. But when they realized he was a Jew, they all shouted in unison for about 2 hours, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." The city clerk quieted the crowd and said, "Follow Ephesians. Doesn't all the world know the city of Ephesus is the guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and of her image, which fell from heaven? Therefore, since these facts are undeniable, you ought to calm down and not do anything rash. You have brought these men here, though they have neither robbed temples nor blasphemed our goddess. If then Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a grievance against anybody, the courts are open, and there are proconsuls. They can press charges. If there is anything further you want to bring up, it must be settled in a legal assembly. As it is, we are in danger of being changed with writing because of what happened today. In that case, we should be able to account for this commotion. Since there is no reason for it, after he had said this, he dismissed the assembly. Well, Paul is still in Ephesus, and remember, the whole city was upset and they had confusion because of Rome and the way it was going at them. But they were also upset because of Paul. Paul was there doing his thing. And so there were some problems going on, and Paul was there in the midst, and they were confused. And when they went to the theater, remember, they were considering Rome's attitude towards their disorder, and things were getting out of hand. So they start telling them that great is Diana of the Ephesians, and this is what they were repeating, um, and this had to be hard for the Christians to hear, and including Paul, you know, and you could hear it from outside the theater. So they were outside the theater having this ruckus, and they did this for a while. Great is Diana of the Ephesians, but for all the things that Diana was going to be to the Ephesians, she wasn't a true God. And that was the point Paul had been making. When they were upset about Paul um, messing with their money, he was telling them, you are dealing with these things that can't do anything. You keep worshiping these things that are not of you, of anything. And you've seen what happens, but you keep doing it. You don't stop. You keep talking to this idol. You keep worshiping these things. So when you see Paul and he speaks to them, and they're speaking, it says the assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Now Paul is in the midst, and you can hear it outside. Most of the people did not even know why they were there. What we here for? The Jews in the crowd, they were pushing Alexander to the front, and they were shouting instructions to him. But he was trying to get him in order to calm down, to quiet up, and it wasn't going to happen at that time. It wasn't going to happen. They did this for a while, as I stated. Therefore, since these things cannot be denied because of what was going on, you ought to be quiet and do nothing rashly. So the clerk was telling them, you know, hey, nothing can happen. We can do some things, but this isn't one of them. And they wanted to show the rational people saw nothing to fear from the Christians. It wasn't like Paul had beat somebody up. It wasn't like they were harming somebody, but there was nothing to fear the Christians or to oppose. So know that the devil was working very hard in Ephesus. And this could be why Paul's book is so detailed about our battle with the devil. And he talks about the powers that you can't see, spiritual darknesses, and he spoke about this to the Ephesians. If you look at Ephesians 6, 10 through 20, he tells you about this. But the one thing that this chapter teaches us is there's a permanent lesson to be learned here. If you're doing what you should have, if a revival truly is working, then the whole community gets revived. And as we go through this, you'll see some things. Because they said, but when they realized he was a Jew, they all shouted in unison for about 2 hours as we spoke, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Artemis is the goddess. Excuse me. So they're screaming this, but the city clerk, like I said, was trying to quiet the crowd down. Therefore, and he says in verse 36, since these facts are undeniable, and the facts were, fellow Ephesians, doesn't all the world know the city of Ephesus is the guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and of her image which fell from heaven? So he's making a statement, but it's a false statement. And then it says, therefore, because that's him saying, since these facts are undeniable, you ought to calm down and do not do anything rash. You have brought these men here. Okay, you brought them here. Though they have neither robbed temples, they ain't robbed your temples, nor have they said anything blasphemous against your goddess, so you don't have anything to truly attack them for. If then Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a grievance against anybody, we should take it to court. We should have it in front of a trial. And then they said they can press charges there. If something comes up, they can press charges, or they can present it to the court and press charges. If there is anything further you want to bring up, it got to be settled in a legal assembly. But nothing was brought up, as they said. And then he says, as it is, we are in danger of being charged with rioting because of what happened today. So here's a charge that could come up, the charge for rioting because of what happened today. In that case, we would not be able to account for this commotion. Uh-oh. Since there is no reason for it. Not only can't we account for the commotion, and the reason we can't account for it is because there's no reason for it. And after he had said this, he dismissed the assembly. That was it. Amen.